it should create it. Let's just see when I click on execute. Okay, I just have.
Yeah.
I probably put it in wrong, right, my fault.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's not the properties from. Let's try this again. Yes, I know one scheme name.
Yeah. Sorry. It's all Microsoft
I can't do this stuff because I don't have lab 3 imported. Yeah, I can't do it. I think you can do it. You can. I'm pretty sure you can import lab 3. Yeah. No, lab 2. Import lab 2. What do you mean?
Query unsolved, left join, right join.
I don't remember this question from last week. Oh, you mean the glory? I think it works.
So I just made a mistake in my.
Which part of it doesn't work?
Right.
It's like, it's supposed to be with left joins and these joins, so that.
No, they're all inner joins, right?
Make
It should
sure
all
you
be.
do it properly, because you'll get errors like I did, all right? So check out your typing and check out everything. So I'm gonna copy this.
I remember there should be one left join and then one right join.
Now,
Let me check mine.
the second one says it wants departments. So simply change employees to departments. And
where you have those tables.
all right. Departments is done. Now it asks for rows. Okay, so I'll change table to rows.
It does?
Yeah, this one is so
Select just that line.
this one's 2, and then this one is
Fine. Another select statement.
this one is 3.
This time it will be hobbies. Okay, so change the table to hobbies. And execute. Fine. And lastly, it says, and the hobby related tables you will need to run your access reports. Well, the one it wants is the employee hobby data that has, you know, the employee ID and the hobby ID columns in it. Right? So I'll just change the table to employee hobby data. I think that's what my table is called. And select the line, execute, bingo. All right. Now, so it's 5 select statements, but the only difference is the table. You're transferring from your lab 3 to your lab 4 through SQL Server. Before I do anything else, I'm going to save this file. And you simply go to save, or go to file, save. I've saved it. Now, make sure that indeed they have actually copied over. I'll go to my lab 4 and my tables. There they are. My departments, my hobby data, my employees, my hobbies, my roles. All right? So there are the 5 tables. All right. Step 163 is they want you to connect now using your login ID. Well, we got to do a wee bit of configuration here so you don't get error messages. The 2 most common error messages are error 223, where you don't have what are called pipes open. These are actual connections from the database, from the user to the server. It can see the server, it knows it's there, but it can't get to it because these connection types have not been enabled. And the second one, error 18456, is a simple one. It's just that when you installed SQL Server, you didn't install it as an administrator, you installed it as a user, so it won't let you have access. You can change that quickly by running it as an administrator. We'll do that, right?
So, let me show you something.
So we're going to be a wee bit proactive here and get that configuration done before we do anything else. So, is everybody good with copying of tables from lab 3 to lab 4?
Go check out this
Right?
one.
Well, just follow the steps you have
But
and
he
use
has
your
lab
appropriate
2.
tables. Don't
He doesn't have
look
lab
at
3
your
and 4.
tables. Your table's going to be
I
different.
want to do lab 2 because I'm stuck on it, so I can't do lab 3 with
Tables have to be in existence.
Lab 2,
Now,
lab 2. Yeah.
close down
something
SQL
separate.
Server. What we're going to do now is, we're going to go to the SQL Server application on on your desktop, right? So I'll go up here. When you got your 5 tables copied, close down your SQL Server. We have to do some configuration. We'll scroll down. There's Microsoft SQL Server. And there is your SQL Server 2019 Configuration Manager from your applications. Select it. Go to SQL Server 19 from your applications and select Configuration Manager. And you say yes. All right. Now, from here, you're going to select or expand SQL Server Network Configuration. And then you see one that says protocols for MS SQL Server. You won't have 01, 02, 03, all right? Those are just mine playing with. But you do have MS SQL Server, right? Good. Click on that lab. There are 3 protocols: shared memory, named pipes, and TCP/IP. Is your named pipes and TCP/IP protocols disabled? Yes. Okay. Now mine are enabled because I've already done this. But what you do is, I'm going to double click on named pipes, and you get that dialog box. And you see where it says general, it'll say yours disabled. And you go to the little down arrow to the right, and you choose to make it enabled. Now, I'm just going to open this up again. When you change it to enabled, and you click on OK, you're going to get a little message saying, well, it's not going to take effect until you stop the service and start it. But we'll do that in a moment, all right? So, once you click on OK, I'll just cancel. It now says enabled, right? Your named pipes. Do the same thing for TCP/IP. Enable it. So now you have all 3 protocols, shared memory, named pipes, and TCP/IP enabled. It doesn't take effect until you stop and start the server. You do that from here, right? So, you select where it says SQL, the very first one, SQL Server Services. And then, on the far right, you're going to have where you have MySQL Server. There it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. SQL Server, MySQL Server, and it's running. Well, what you're going to do is double click on it, and you're going to stop it. Just click on the stop button. And stopping it, give some time. Because I've been doing this for 30 years. I think there's more than one server going on. Now, you're going to start it. All right. Close down this dialog box. It's running again. But you stop, it's accepted the new enabling configuration for the protocols. You've done that. Close down the configuration manager. Now, the second problem you may have is that you're not running as an administrator. Well, what we're want to do here is back to your apps, back to SQL Server, back down, and go to your tools. There's your SQL Server management, but now this time, right click on it, and more, and run as administrator. Okay? You're going to go to your SQL Server, yeah, SSMS. Going to right click on it, going to select more, and you're going to select run as administrator. Select it. Say yep, as your administrator. It opens up as normal, it's just now you're the administrator. Okay, now, what it asks to do here is connect to the SQL Server using your new login and run the select statements to see that your data has been copied. And put a screenshot. All right, now default is always Windows authentication. So you click on the little down arrow and you choose SQL Server authentication. Notice it brings in a username, but I don't want this one. This is the one we used last time. I want the one I just created with you guys, so it's Roy 304 login. And now you gotta put in your password. And if I did everything correctly, I should have access. I'm in. Now, if I look at my databases, it looks fine. If I go to security and login, see, there's only two of them. There's the one I just made and the SA for system administrator. That's how you know you're not in by Windows authentication, which everybody can access everything. You're in yours specifically. All right, so you go to databases, you go to your lab4. I have lab4 304 here. I'm going to expand the tables. There they are. Well, now I'm going to make a query. So a new query. Select star from, and then you're going to put in lab 4 304 employee data dot departments semicolon. Make sure I got everything right. Yeah, that's my fault. I got it wrong.
Maybe.
Baby.
Check the other ones. Yeah. Check the other ones. Yes. Yes. C, 30, B, right? So then it will be Bobby data. And this one will be Bobby, this one Rose. So if I do all of them at once, there they all are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? That's the screenshot you should have. You have 5 select statements, run them all at once, and then you won't be able to show all the 5 tables as results, but you can see some of them. I can see 3 tables right now, right? I can see department, employee hobby data, and a little bit of employees. Or you can scroll down and show other parts, it's up to you, right? But that's what you need for that screenshot. That's in step 163. And save it. Save it where you want to save it, right? But you have not that they're complex, but there's a lot of typing, so you have a lot of typing, save it. You may need it again. It doesn't really cost anything, memory, just save it. So there's your 5 select statements, and by seeing that you have the records, they've been successfully copied over. Now, I'm just gonna get rid of these here. Now, I think I told you this last week, but if you want a quick look-see to make sure it actually did work without putting in a select statement, you just right-click on the table in question, and from the pop-up menu, select the third option, select top 1,000 rows. It'll show you. Nice and easy. But the assignment wants you to type out the select statements, not this. Up to you. I save all my queries. Okay, so now step 2 says, now that you have data copied over to the new database, we'll create relationships using the diagram editor. Well, fine. We're going to log out and come back in as a regular user using Windows authentication. All right? So, once you're done, you've got your select statements, you've got your print screen, close it down. Open up SQL Server like you would regularly do, not as administrator. There's see, I want Windows authentication. There you go. And connect. All right, I'm in. Which is no surprise, of course, you know. But now, you want to give yourself permission to do this. So first of all, you're coming in not as administrator, using your Windows authentication, not SQL Server. You go into security. You go into logins. Now, find your server. Not your login name, your server. All right? And there's MySQL server, all right? But there it is there. That's why I asked you to save your launch screen. If I go back to my launch screen, all right, and I'm just going to blow this up. Bigger. Well, not that big. All right, there's my server name, right? That's from the launch screen. And if I look, let's move this over here a bit. There it is right here. So that's my server. All right. So I can look at here, and yep, there it is there. So I know that's my server name. With my cursor on my server name, I just want to look at the properties for a second. Yeah, okay, for rolling. All right. No, you just use Windows, so you don't use any login name. All right. Just going to go up to my main server here. Whoops, all right. Properties. I'm just checking something. Okay. We're going to go back to the assignment. So let's go back to security. You have your logins. Open up your Windows login profile, not the one you made, not the Roy login ID, all right?
to save it in a zip file. Like how to save this in a zip
Once you click on, hold that
Where do you
down.
want to save it?
So you go to your
so that I can upload it on
Oh.
my
server name login, right click, properties. Then from the selected page on the upper left here, select server roles. I already have mine checked off. Make sure all of your check boxes are selected to give you all permissions, right? For everything. Okay, make sure they're all checked off, and then click on OP.
Oh yeah, because you see here, I have this option,
Now,
and then I can do zip. You might want to
2.2
install.
says add all of them. Fair enough, we did. Now we can make a database diagram. So it says 2.3 says create a new database by right mouse clicking on database diagrams under lab4. All right, I'm just going to minimize logins, minimize security, open up databases, go to my lab4, expand it. There's database diagrams. Right click and new database diagram. It says, yes, you want me to create them? Yeah. Say yes. Now, what tables do you want to do? Well, if you look at the assignment and look at the screen, the screenshot, there's 4 tables. There's employees. There's employees. There's also departments. So I held down my control key and I clicked on the second table. There's also employee hobby data. So mine is called, well, employee hobby data. And hobbies. You don't have to select roles.
Stop.
Well, okay, it's your choice. You want to stop. Where did you stop?
From question.
Wow, sorry, I'm not going back to that. You should have told me that when we did one, not when we're doing right back here. So there's 4 tables, you don't need rows, all right? And I'm going to click on add, and you'll see them pop up, bang, 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 bang. And then click on close. So you can move these around. So I'm going to move mine around and shorten them down a bit, all right? So employees, for example, I'm just going to here, that, bring this guy here, bring this guy over here. And there's another guy way in the far right. There he is. So scroll to the right to pick him up. And I'll just put him over here. So I can see them all at once. Now, taking a look at the screenshot on your assignment, all right? It has employee with departments, employee with employee hobby data, and employee hobby data with hobbies. All right, fair enough. Now, going back up, just want to read here. It says 2, 3, 1, add each of the tables in the data diagram. You get it. Set the primary keys for each table. Well, give me a second here. For employees, I'm going to set the ID column as the primary key. So I place my cursor on the ID column, right click, and select Set Primary Key. There's a little key inside, all right? For departments, it's going to be Department ID. Right click, and Set Primary Key. Now, for hobbies, yeah. The primary key, oops. There we go. And for employee hobby data, I didn't add any primary key. Because I'm going to be relating that through employees and through hobbies, right? So, going back up to the instructions. So 231, add the diagram table. 232, add the primary keys. Once the keys are in place, let's go to 233. Now we make the foreign key relationships. So it says here, select the field containing the foreign key. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do one relationship at a time, of course. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to relate employees to the departments. So I'm going to make this a bit shorter. And bring it up. Just get these out of the way. Okay, here's my employee and my department. So I'm going to right-click on employees, because department ID of departments is going to hook up with department ID employees. Right-click on the title of employees, select relationships. You're going to click on Add, and it gives you a name of the relationship up here. F key employees. Now, you've got to go onto the right-hand side, and under where it says General, it says Tables and Columns. Click on that. Then you see the little three dots at the far right. Click on that. All right. So, I'm going to go down to the primary key table, and I'm going to look at departments. And then right below, and you can't see it until you click, in the white space right below it, then you get a field. You don't see it until you click. So if you didn't know it, what do I do? So from now you're going to select the column that you want to relate. And it gives you just the columns of the table you selected. We selected departments. So we want department ID. And we have employees. And from the employees table, we're going to select department ID. Yeah, you have here tables and columns. And then you click on the three dots on the right hand side. So now, you've got the two columns you wish to relate. Right? Between the department, which is the primary key, and employees, which is the foreign key, and they're both going to relate to the common column, department ID. You click on OK, and you click on Close, and there's the relationship. There it is. You see where a department can have many employees, right, with a little infinity sign attached to the employee table. Okay. Now, I want to attach, or relate, I should say, the employee hobby data file to the hobbies table. I'm just going to make this a bit prettier looking. Like that. Okay, so we're going to relate hobbies with employee hobby data, obviously, with hobby ID, right? So we're going to have here, hobbies can be used by many employees. So it's like a department can have many employees, a hobby can be used by many employees. So the foreign key will be the employee hobby data table. So you right click on that table, relationships, click on add, select tables and columns, click on the three dots. So the primary key table is hobbies, and the column is hobby ID. Foreign key table is employee hobby data, and the column you want is, well, hobby ID. Right? So you click on OK. Click on Close. And there it is. And you see the key is on hobbies, and I can have many employees who do swimming, or many employees who do walking, or many employees who do painting. Right? But you have one more relationship to make. It's got to be between the employees and employee hobby data, where the employee can have many hobbies. Right? I can do reading and swimming and hiking, napping, and sleeping. So, the foreign key is employee hobby data. Again, so we right-click on employee hobby data, relationships. Click on add. You'll see one already there. That's the one you just made, between employee hobby data and hobbies. You want to make a new one. And add, tables and columns, three dots. Okay. So primary key is going to be employees. Down arrow and click on employees. And I'm going to
Would
use.
you be able to import the access database into lab4?
The what?
The
Now,
access
my-
database from lab2 into lab3.
From lab2? Yeah.
Would you be able to import that?
Column I'm using is
Because
ID.
I can't import the access database. Do you know how to do that?
Let me check. From lab2.
I go to my foreign
Yeah,
key
from
table,
lab2 to lab3.
which is employee hobby data, it's already selected. And I click on the down arrow,
Is this the one you used to import?
and now my
I
employee
install that
ID
program. You
column
install a program.
is called row number. That's what I call it,
So-
all right? You may have a different name. I select row number. I select OK.
It's not the last one.
I select close. And there it is. There's my new relationship where one employee can have many hobbies. And that's the screenshot I want. All right? You always set the relationships up
to
by
lab 3.
selecting the foreign key table first.
Remember that part?
Right? So when I put these two together, I know that the department can have many employees.
So
The department's the primary key table. Employees the foreign key table. I right click on the table name, relationships.
make
I click on add a relationship. It gives me a name for it. You just leave it as a name. You
Did
go
you
to
do this?
tables,
Yeah, so go
call
to-
tables and columns, hit the little three dots, and then you select
Did you do it?
primary
this
key,
way?
departments,
for the user, yeah.
the column that's going to be used,
Because
capital
mine,
ID,
I have to.
and then on the right hand
I think
side
it's
is
this
the foreign key table, because you selected this one,
Yeah.
so it knows it's the
So
foreign key.
select
This
that.
one.
You select the column, department
Did you have to
ID,
do this too?
and it makes it.
But
And you do the same thing with hobbies, employee hobby data, and the same thing, employees, employee.
you didn't run it.
I think up until the
So there's three
program,
relationships you're
there
gonna
was a
have,
program
with
that
four
was
tables.
installed.
This one.
This one open.
I already have it installed. Here. But it's just.
You're gonna
It
have to
doesn't
play
work.
with it, all right? I mean,
Yours
in
worked.
essence, I don't have to.
Mine
show you
worked
this.
last
You should
week.
be reading the books and whatnot,
Justin,
but I'm going through
that
it.
he helped me last time, so maybe you can ask him because I really have no.
So now,
The lab is very quick. It moves very quick.
Yeah, I lost in this also.
it asks you to save your database and all your work. Well, if I click on my diskette icon to save my diagram, it asks me, what do you want to call it? I think it has a name for it. Lab4 employee data diagram. Phew. All right. Lab4 and that's the name it asks you to save in step 2.3.4. Following tables will be saved. Yep. I say yes, thank you. All right. I expand my database diagrams. There it is. Yep.
In the sample screenshot, it uses the many-to-many relationship employee hobby table. That just has hobby ID and employee ID, not
Well-
the employee hobby data table that you're using here.
Well, my hobbies has hobby ID, right? You see it here.
I do.
And then it's going to the employee hobby data, which has last name, first name, hobby ID.
But that's not what's in the sample, is what I'm trying to say.
That's fine, that's what I want.
Okay.
The sample says A, I want B. If you want to give me A, that's fine. I'm giving people an option, all right, to do this or do the other one. Well, it's hobby ID. But in the assignment, it's slightly different. If you want to use that relationship, that's fine. It's not different, it's the same. This is the same as the assignment.
Except that it's not.
You're going to have to spend some time on this because it's going to be fully dependent on your columns in your database tables. If they're not set up properly, this is not going to work. All right? Yep.
In the relationship between employee having data and employees, which one is the
Take your mouse.
Did
Come
you
here.
get any of the grades?
the one between
Do you have
employee
any
having
grades?
data and
Only
which
lab
ones
1.
did you relate?
You don't have plan 1?
Well, which common columns do you have?
No.
Yeah, I received.
That's what you have to look at.
I
First name
actually
and last name.
emailed the professor.
Really?
because
That's how you identify
he couldn't see
a
my
single
lab, so
single
I
row
went to
in a
Florida
table by last name. What if I have two people named Roy?
but now I have 4.
The common
You're missing the concept here.
So in our employee.
Primary key means when I select that particular value in that column, it'll give me one record and one record only.
yes, that would be wrong.
What if, you said last name, but what if I have 10 customers with the same last name?
I said last name as the common ones, like the.
No, no,
they have in
no.
both.
I'm asking you, which of the columns do you use to make the primary key? That's what you need.
Roll number and ID.
Well, you're asking me, I don't know your table. What are the common columns in your table? What matches? You're not understanding the concept, I can tell right away. You should by now, this is your second semester. You have to have a column in one table that matches the column values in the second table. The primary foreign key relationship. That's what has to happen here. That's how you relate them.
And that's what I did, but it did not work for me, that's why I'm asking.
Well, again, what do you want me to say? You have to have the same column that has the same values. I'm using employee ID number. Down in here, I have row number, which is the same as the values in ID. Which columns do you have the same values? I can't hear you.
It's supposed to be roll number and ID, for some reason it's wrong.
All right, then what you have to do is, you've got to go back to your tables, you've got to look at the values in those two columns and see why they don't match. And you have to make repairs to them. Because right away, it's not gonna work if they have a mismatch. That's the purpose of a primary and foreign key for referential integrity. If you don't have the same values in the primary key column for table 1 as the foreign key column in table 2, it won't let you. It won't let you relate it. Because you've made the primary key. You're saying, this is the one I'm going to relate to go to other tables. All right. Yep.
So roll number should be the system generated number.
It can be, or you can just make them yourselves. So it doesn't ask you to make it an auto number, but you can if you want, but you've got to match the ID employee with the ID or roll number in the second table. You've got to match them.
So how can we modify our original?
You've got to go back to Access, change the tables, import them back into SQL Server, and then do this. Yeah, that's how it's done. That's why I said it was really important that your tables are done correctly the first time, or else this is not. Well, it doesn't matter if you didn't know that. You make your tables correct to begin with. That's the point.
So do you think you can show me how this conversation is equal to the one that
Well, I didn't. I only made one key. I didn't make any keys here.
Okay,
That's why.
but this is a conversation.
And that's fine. Yeah. That's okay.
So how is it the same? I don't understand.
Well, because of the relationships. I'm looking at primary to infinity. That's all. I'm looking at the relationships. You're just using different keys.
Right, so if I'm using the constant key here, how should I connect them in any relationship? Because when I'm trying,
Well, it's not many to many.
that's the whole point of having a hobby.
Employees, if you look at the screen result, it's going to be one employee who has many hobbies. That's it. There is no many to many here. Look at the assignment.
I thought that was the whole point of making.
No, look at the assignment.
I am, I'm looking at it right here.
No, you're not. You're looking at your screen, not the assignment.
I'm sorry, please stop me from understanding.
All right. Look at the assignment step 2, 3, 4.
Save your diagram. Yep, I see it.
And take a look at the screenshot that was provided to you in the assignment. Okay, so you have department, many employees. You have employee hobby data, many employees.
To me, it looks like the many is on the employee. Is that not the infinity symbol right here? And right here?
That's my eyes.
Does that not indicate that it's a many-to-many relationship? Thank you very much for reading that. Please stop being condescending when your students are asking questions. It's really, really disrespectful. Thank you very much. Okay, so, now that we've established that, I'm having a hard time when I try to add my
And
relationship.
I'm going to take this offline, right? Because I want to get further through this. Okay. Now, we're going to start using, we've got to get out of SQL Server and start using a new application that comes with Windows, not with SQL Server itself, nor with Management Studio, but with Windows. And it's called an ODBC Data Source Administrator Open Database Connectivity, ODBC. So step 3 says, now you will create an ODBC data source for your new database. And it says 3.1, open the ODBC Data Source Administrator tool in Windows. So, I'm just going to close down SQL Server for a moment. I'm going to go back to my applications and scroll down. I think it's in Windows Administrative Tools. There it is. The one, they have two choices, right? Depending on what your system is, a 32-bit or 64-bit. We're going to get the 64-bit.
Could you please send me this recording? You're done? Because
Now,
I'm
I'm going to click on ODBC Data Sources, 64-bit. And I get that screen. Everybody okay with that screen? I get a different screen.
You're not here.
Okay, so close down SQL Server. Go to your applications on your Windows desktop. Scroll down to Windows Administrative Tools. And select your ODBC 64 bits, not 32. So I'm on my Windows desktop. I go to my applications. I scroll down. W for Windows, Windows Administrative Tools, and scroll down a little bit more. Oops. ODBC 64-bit. And you get this screen. Now, I want you to click on Add on the top right, and then from the dialog box, so it's near the bottom, it's SQL Server Native Client 11.0. That's the one you wish to select. And click on Finish. Now, do you get this screen or do you get a different screen? This screen? Okay. Because there's two screens you can choose here. Not choose, but depending on the type of configuration you have. All right. So what we'll do is, what name do you want to use to refer to your data source? That's the name of your database table in SQL Server. So it's not just any name you make up, it's the name in your database server. So in my case, it's lab4 304 data. And if you're not sure, and I'm not, so I'm going to open up SQL Server for a second. Connect, and take a look at my databases. Tables. lab4 304 employee data. All right, I just want to make sure I got that right. So lab4 304 employee data. lab4 304 employee data. The description, it's optional. You can put that in if you wish. But the server, that's your server name. If I go back into SQL Server, it's this guy up here, the one that I asked you to save earlier. So if I go to my little WordPad and I select that and I copy it, and then I go to, whoops, there. There it is. So now you have the name of the database table that you want to play with in SQL Server, and it's coming from this server.
Yeah. Can you show again how do you get that server?
The server name?
Yeah.
If you do you have SQL Server open?
Yeah.
Well, make it easy on yourself. Close it down. Open it up. And before you connect, do you see the server name?
Give me a second.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Copy it.
That's why, for now. Okay?
Professor, what date is the table name on the schema name? The first line, the name, schema name.
This here?
Yes,
That's the one you created in SQL Server.
the schema name, not the table name.
Yeah, the schema. Well, they say, how do you want to refer to the data source? It's that schema.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, you don't have the 304, of course. And make sure you have the proper spelling for your server name. And you click on next. Now after the next, there's two options here. The Windows authentication or the SQL Server authentication. Well, you want the SQL Server because that's the one associated with your password in lab4, right? You paid that a lot earlier. So you select the second option, and the ID is your name and login. Mine is Roy 304 and login. And then don't forget your password. And next. Everything is fine. Whoops, let me go back one. There you go. There's nothing here you have to change in the next screen. Leave it as is. You click on next, and everything else there is good. And you click on finish. Now,
In the file, this is lab4, not before.
I'm sorry?
The assignment is lab4, not default.
Hang on a second, you cancel that. Where are you looking? In this screen here?
Yeah, like 4.9. The assignment?
In the assignment you're looking at?
Yeah, 4.9.
Hang on. Oh, no, that's, no, we're not even close to that. That second part is through access. All right? So, we're way up. We're not even close to that. We're at section 3.2, 3.3. So don't get confused. Right? So right now, we're just in the ODBC connectivity screen, not through access. Right? So, finish. Now this is the one that will show you whether or not it really works. And this is the one for the screenshot, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, your success, 3.4 is your successful connection. So if I've done everything correctly, and cross my fingers, test data source, select it. Great. That's what you should get, all right? And that's the little screen that you put in your assignments. Now we're going to do this all over again, but it's going to be through access. Sorry? So either your schema name is wrong, your login name is wrong. There could be a lot of figures, why it's wrong. I can't tell you. I don't know what your login name is, your password is, your schema name is wrong. So it's all of those that could be wrong.
Sorry, like this screenshot is all this password. Like the screenshot.
That's the one that you put in the assignment.
Yeah, like question, like what's the question number?
That would be 3.4? Yeah, 3.4.
Oh, okay.
Now we're going to do this all over again, but now it's going to be through access. Pretty well the same steps. So I'm at step 4. I'm going to close everything works here, it's good. So okay, and then okay. Now, step 4 says open Microsoft Access and connect to the new database using its ODBC connectivity. All right, so I'll open up Access. I open up my file, my Northwind Traders database. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it as let's see here.
first database file we used, right, in this lab, right?
Yeah, the one you use that we're using so far. Okay. So lab 1, 2, 3. I just gotta make myself. So I'm in the database table, Northwind Traders. It says 4.1, make a copy of it, of your lab 3 database and store it as lab 4. So open up your lab 3, then file pull down and save as, and just change lab 3 name to lab 4. And then open up lab 4. Once you've completed it. You won't use the original lab 3, you'll use a copy of it and call it lab 4. Thank you.
And the lab 3 or lab 4 is being accessed on second server. Access. But now there is no lab 3 or 4 in access.
You should have a lab 3 from last week. Should have a lab 3 because the assignment says make a copy of your lab 3 database. Then you should have created a copy of it. So take your original Northwind Traders, you have that, right? Save it as lab 3, then save it as lab 4, so make 2 copies of it.
Basically, in the screen, the right column, the lab 1 is a database of just a group name.
You're talking about this here, Northwind Traders?
Yes.
That's the name of the database, but the file name is different here.
We only have the lab case, lab 1, lab 2. We need this is just a group name. It isn't the database. We haven't lab 3 database.
Well, but they ask you in lab 3 to make lab 1 and lab 2. So you're going to have 2 groups, lab 1 and lab 2.
Yes.
And you're going to save that file as a lab 3 ACCDB.
Okay.
And then it asks you to make a copy of the lab 3 ACCDB as a lab 4 ACCDB. And it's the lab 4 that you're going to open up, what I have here. So they'll all look the same, but you're not going to use the original. You're going to use a copy of it. All right?
They will say that Northwind from last week.
That's fine. There it is. So there's your lab 3. All right. We're going to go through the open database connectivity again, but this time not through the Windows application, which we just did, but this time through Access. And we'll get pretty well the same screens, right? So as 4.3 states, you go to external data, new data source, from other sources, and there's ODBC, Open Database Connectivity Database. So, you open up the lab4 ACCDB, external data, new data source, from other sources, ODBC database. Click on that. Now, you recognize this from last week. Do you want to import or do you want to link? This time we want to link to the data source rather than make a copy of it. So you select the second option. Link to the data source. That would be in step 4.4. You click on OK. I'm just going to put this over here. Let's see in the center. We have two tabs, file data source and machine data source. From the file data source, you have custom templates, Zoom, etc., etc. And from the machine data source, notice all of your files. Lab 304 employee data. You recognize those? Give me a second here. Yeah. So, from your file data source tab, we're going to do something a little bit different. Because this is the screen that you see, right? So we've got to go do a few extra steps before coming back into the lab. From here, you're going to select from your file data source tab. You select new. Scroll down and select SQL Server Native Client 11.0. I think it's second from the bottom. And then, once you've selected that data source, that just simply means I'm going to go to my SQL Server and get my information, my data. You select New. I select Next, I'm sorry. Now, it says, well, type the name of the data source. That would be lab4. Now, I'm going to put 304 because I put that name in. Employee data. That's right, exactly. So it doesn't want just any name, it wants the name of your schema from SQL Server. Mine is called lab4 304 employee data. I'm going to click on next. And it tells me the data source, the file name, and the driver. SQL Server, native client, and I'm getting my schema, lab4 employee data. Now I click on finish, and I get where you want to go to. Now, you see the name? It's already there, lab for, in my case, lab4 employee data. The description is optional, but the server is your server name. So I'm going to go back. I'm pretty sure I still have it here. I'm going to hit Control V. You put in your server name, right? The one from your launch screen when you open up SQL Server. I click on Next. We want, now we can go back to the lab on step 4.8. So 4.8 does not want you to go through Windows authentication, but through your login. So your SQL Server authentication. So you select the second rainbow button. your login. Mine is Roy 304 login. And your password. .9. You're going to click on next. And it wants you to change the default database to your lab4. So you click on the little checkbox at top, change the default database to, then you click on the down arrow for default, and you choose, and there's my lab4 304, right? So you choose your lab4. So make sure that it's going to connect to lab4. So make sure when it says select change default database to, you're choosing lab4. You click on next. Everything there does not have to be changed on the next screen. You're good. You click on finish, and here comes the testing. Hopefully you did it all correct. Hopefully I did it all correct. And good. And you take that screenshot now. See, the first time we did it through open database connectivity through the Windows desktop application. Now we did it through access, accessing the same database. Yeah. Now, we're still not done. Now that you have the DNS ready, you can link it to access. Here we go again. So click on OK, OK, OK. And I'm just going to close that down. All right. So 5.11 says go to external data, new data source, from other sources, ODBC database. All right. So far, and the assignment asks you to link to the data source, not import. Okay. Put this down over here. Yeah, we're doing it again to get the tables in. So you 5.1.2, you're going to select the link option, not import. You go to your machine data sources now, not your file data source, because you've made the file data source. And it asks you to select your newly created one. There's my lab4 304 employee data. If you scroll down, this is the one I want. Lab4 304. Because my schema has this source. I click on OK. Now when you click on OK, it says, well, this is a SQL Server authentication, not a Windows. You've got to put in, it already has your username, but it doesn't know your password. So you've got to put in your password.
So what's the difference between the file data source and the machine?
File data source tells them where to get the files, in what schema. Machine is the actual data, the table itself. The file data source says it's in this house. The machine says it's in this room. Right? So now it says you should okay. Click on OK. Okay, now, here, you have many, many tables. But all you want are your lab4 tables. So if you look at the bottom, there they are here. So there's this one, and hold your control key down, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And that's all there are, right? The 5 you made, the departments, employee, hobby, data, employees, hobbies, roles. So now what we're going to do is, once you click on OK, these are going to be linked in your Access Object panel to SQL Server. So when you make a change, either in Access to SQL Server or SQL Server to the database data, the change will be reflected in either Access or SQL Server, depending upon where you originated your change. So you click on OK, and it says select now the primary keys for each one. So this is for your employee hobby data. Well, it's going to be hobby ID. Then it asks you for your next one, which is role ID. And there are, once you've done all your tables, I've done some of them already, so I know we had to do 2 of them, or you don't have to do all of them. You just put in what the primary key is, and then you look at your unassigned objects, you'll get the little earth, all right, that it's linked. So now, it wants you to put in a little screenshot, and that's step 5.1.4, showing these tables. You won't have as many as I have, because I've been doing it over and over again. You should have like 5 of them, right, for each table. Take a screenshot, and then put it in 5.1.4. Okay, so now it wants you to do an update. I'm going to have to let you do 5.1.5 on, all right? I've got 5 minutes left here. And all you're going to do is you're going to make a change in one of the tables in Access, and you're going to go to SQL Server, open up that table, and you'll see the change. And you take a screenshot. And vice versa. So that's 5.1.5.1. Let's see here.
Link together, so we can change either one of them.
Either one. Exactly. So 5.1.5.2 is doing the changes in Access, showing it in SQL Server, and then finally, the last one is a report. Well, you've done reports before, so that's not going to be difficult to do. All right? So I just don't have time to do the rest yet.